to Chris Doyle, who's joining us from London via Skype. He's the director of the Council for Arab-British Understanding. Thank you very much, Mr. Doyle, for being with us. We've heard a lot of reaction and condemnation today, a lot of statements calling for an independent international investigation into the killing of our colleague. Who, in your view, should be leading this investigation?
Well, it must be independent, it must be international, but it also, and this is really important, it must have the ability to ensure that those who are found to be responsible are held to account and are put on trial and may face a sentence, because this is exactly what is missing day after day, year after year, decade after decade in the case of Israel's behavior and treatment of Palestinians. Basically, there is a well-entrenched climate of impunity that Israeli forces know that basically their government will back them come what may, that they can commit whatever forms of atrocities, killings, assassinations, beating up of Palestinians and indeed others, and get away with it. And this has to stop. If the killing of Shireen Abu Akleh is going to mean anything, then hopefully what will come out of this is the end of this complete climate of impunity.
Right.
It means end to the idea that Israeli forces can just get away with it, because I think she'd still be alive right now if those Israeli soldiers in Jenin knew that there would be consequences for committing a crime and killing journalists.
Why has there been no consequences all these years? I mean, these crimes go unquestioned because the Israeli government knows they'll get away with not conducting a thorough investigation because they won't face any criticism from their allies, from the US, from the UK government as well. What would you like to see your government do about this?
Well, it would be very nice if the British government could even say anything beyond the very merest expressions of concern. They, of course, do not indicate any culpability or responsibility, and crucially are not calling for that independent investigation, because throughout all of these atrocities that we have seen over the years and decades that Israel has been accused of, whether it's in Gaza, the West Bank, in Lebanon in the past, there's never really been that independent inquiry into their actions with the ability to hold those responsible to account. So yes, of course, the United States is a main reason for this, but I think there's something else at play here. And what we see so often now, and there was a recent report brought out in Canada about anti-Palestinian racism, racism against Arabs, where body counts aren't done, that the killings of Arabs and Palestinians are just numbers, they're not stories, they're dehumanized. And they are deprived of their context, they're not considered to be indigenous people with rights to self-determination and so forth. And this is being recognized the world over. At a broader level, it means that European powers, the United States, their friends can get away with pretty much anything. Their enemies are held to account. And we see this, of course, over Ukraine, where Russia, in the case of Russia, the ICC is brought into play. There's going to be an investigation. We see that Western companies are pulling out of Russia, huge expressions of anger and concern. But none of this happens when it is for a friend of the West, and in this case, Israel. So we could see, I hope, I really hope, that we will see genuine accountability for the killing of Shireen. But I fear that if things go as normal, what we will see is this will soon be forgotten. The industrial scale effort to blur the story and cloud the issue with alternative narratives, and we've already seen the Israeli narrative changing several times today, will be perhaps successful, and there'll be some other story that will dominate the headlines in the days to come. We mustn't allow that to happen. It's absolutely vital that international law means something. And it means something for all those Palestinians whose killings have also gone uninvestigated. I mean, I remind you, viewers, that so far this year, Israeli forces have killed 10 Palestinian children. Now, they're not getting any investigations as to the circumstances of their killing. This has to stop.
Thank you so very much for talking to us and sharing your views. Chris Doyle, Director of the Council for Arab-British Understanding. Thank you very much for joining us on Al Jazeera.